What's up, everyone? Welcome to another interview. This one's been a little bit delayed, but I'm really happy to be sitting here at long last with the indomitable MrBitter, I guess we'll say. Before we hop into this, before I even let him say a word, I actually just want to let you guys know this one's happening completely pro bono. We don't have any ESH attachment or anything on this one, unfortunately, though that may be. So if you wanted to support what this is and what's happening here, you can check me out, patreon.com/Cyan Esports. And I think actually, if I can figure it out, we're gonna put this one up on Twitch as like a vodcast thing or whatever that feature's called. I've never used it, so it depends on whether or not I can figure it out in the next 24 hours. But there should be a donor link down below if you wanted to do that. And I don't even know if alerts come up for that. But any support is appreciated. Sharing the video is just a good way to do it too. Commenting, all that stuff. Anyways. Enough about me. MrBitter, how are you doing on this wonderful, lovely Monday afternoon? How's life?
I'm feeling indomitable. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Wonderful that you deserve. I'm so happy to be sitting here and having the chance to talk to you, man. Like this is one of the ones that I had on like my esports bucket list, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, check that box.
Yeah, man. It's getting shorter every day. It feels good. So I wanna dive in. And we're gonna skip some of the more, I guess, fluffier questions. You've not been around, I guess, for a little while, but there's a ton of cool interviews with you from the past. I recommend anybody check out your Real Talk with JP. That was a really good piece of content.
That was a classic. There's some embarrassing videos of me on the internet. It's true.
Do you consider that to be an embarrassing video?
No, no. The interview with JP was great, but there was somebody did an edit of it with all the fucks, and that one is more embarrassing.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
There you are. You're back.
Okay, Jesus. Not a great start, but that's such as life. Is that my internet or yours?
It's okay.
All right. Well, we were recording through that, so we can have a nice, fun little whoops, my bad, the internet screwed up moment. Guys, to let you all in on a little secret here. This has been a rough, rocky start. My tech stuff has been totally failing, so I just want to apologize on camera, MrBitter. If there's anything that goes awry, I'm deeply
it's all good. Like we said in the setup, I worked with the NASL sound guy, so I've been there.
Let's actually use that right now. Do you know, like, where did the NASL sound guy end up, huh? What's he doing now? You know,
he's
by
out
chance?
Somewhere. He's still working in esports somewhere. There's anytime you hear an audio snafu, you can count on the fact that it's the NASL sound guy. I gotta say, like I've seen him pop up in like League of Legends streams and stuff, like in the chat, and it always makes me smile knowing that the NASL sound guy is still out there.
I find that to be really interesting. I think that it's so strange that one of Starcraft 2 esports' biggest legacy from when it was the esport is the NASL sound guy, because everyone in esport memes about it, right? Like in every scene, even in Overwatch now, the new kid on the block. Is it a little like bittersweet to you that that's the great legacy of NASL?
Oh, bittersweet. That's funny too. No, it's cool, man. Like the world turns, and it's cool that any part of that is still kind of here today. You know what I mean? Like it feels good to know that that legacy continues, and even if it is in a memey and kind of tongue-in-cheek sort of way.
Good to hear it. I think that's the only way to look at it, right? Otherwise, you just lose your sanity at some point. So, you got your start, going way back here, you got your start in the Starcraft scene with your series 12 Weeks of Pro. And the premise was that you would recruit a professional player and you'd receive coaching from them, and you'd like stream it and put it on your YouTube, and it would be a sort of a tutorial video for everyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, is that content something that you would ever bring back? I mean, you've been through so many different scenes at this point as a behind the scenes person, but could you ever produce a series like that for another game, or even Starcraft 2 again? Who knows?
Could we? Sure. I think, and in fact, I'd say in some spaces, like it probably should be done. Back then, I just really wanted to play lots of Starcraft, and I wanted to get better at Starcraft. And in that kind of era, it was like, I don't know if we could really throw the word around, like the esports word around. Like, I guess it kind of was esports back then, but I don't know that we were saying it all that much. The idea of coaching was kind of like a little bit taboo, right? Like, if you went and paid for a coach, like, you're such a dork. Why would you do that? You're playing video games. Who spends their money to get coached in video games? And like that era, like 2010, with the sort of the the live streaming revolution, like when that really happened and it just became accessible for anyone to do it. I thought coaching was awesome, and I was just like, I want to get coached, and I want to stream it because I think people would like to watch it, and no one else was doing it, right? So we just did, and it absolutely took off. But I think it took off because no one else was doing it. It was like the first time that anyone sat down and said, hey, we're going to do a coaching show. Since then, I think a lot of people have made coaching shows. So I would say, like, it's probably not a good idea to go into a space that's like super saturated with lots of good educational content and just do the same thing. But I do think that there is still a great audience out there for like a good host to sit down with a good pro and play a game and get real coaching and talk about it and make it fun. Make it fun, I think, is the key. Like, we had a lot of fun back then, and I think that's why our content resonated.
Yeah, I think that some of the most gravitating content from, I guess, quote unquote, back in the day, like when I first started watching esports in 2012, it was all about having fun and the personalities, and it all seemed to be like a big group of friends most of the time, which I thought was really cool and really compelling for me as a new person getting involved. And I wonder, do you ever miss the days of 2010 esports? Like, as an industry, it was a real like Wild West setting, I guess. But is there anything about that era that you would like to see brought back as an industry thing, or as a, just a social group even?
Yeah, there's tons that I'd like to see brought back. I think in a lot of ways, esports has lost its way in the post early days era, I guess. Can we even call that early days? It's like the second esports wave, the first one being like early 2000, right? I think that we have gotten ourselves into this new space where like everything is so siloed, and if you're going to go to an event, you're going to go to an event for a game. You're going to go to the international or the LCS finals or BlizzCon. And back in 2010, or even earlier, you go to an MLG and it's like lots of games under one roof, and it's lots of people coming together to have fun and to play together. And like coming together to play is sort of the key. And I think that we're not doing that enough today. Like there aren't as many come get together and play a bunch of games under one roof events anymore. We have DreamHack. MLG's around doing their thing, but they're pretty damn focused on Call of Duty and Halo now. And I would say those events are even kind of siloed. I do very much miss the day of the multi-game event. I'd love to host, every console shooter under one roof, or let's throw RTS Con. That'd be sick. Or let's do both at the same time in the same venue. That's what I miss most about those early days.
I think about the concept of RTS Con like all the time. I super agree. I think that this would be a really cool thing to be resurrected, but I wonder, is it even possible in this day and age? I mean, Evo and the FGC is pretty much the only example I can think of where that still exists. And I mean, you mentioned DreamHack, but it seems like even within a DreamHack, within that building where they host their events, everything is very much segmented and everybody kind of stays in their lane. Has the esports industry just developed to a point where this is even not possible?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think so. I think everything's segmented because of the way the IP holders are kind of positioning themselves. Esports today is so different from what it was back then. Like when I started at Red Bull a little over 4.5 years ago, if we wanted to do an event, like say we wanted to do a Starcraft event, it's just like, let's call Blizzard and, hey guys, we want to do a Starcraft event. Blizzard's like, dope, we would love for you to do a Starcraft event. And we went and we did a Starcraft event. It was fun. The industry has changed a lot, man. Like the Twitch came and was built and sold for $1 billion on the backs of other people's IP. And I think when that happened, All the people who owned the IP said, "Shit, we probably should be more protective because $1 billion is a lot of money." Um, and I don't know. I don't know where it's going to land, but in my heart, like, gamers want to come together and play games, and we don't care if one developer makes that game and another developer makes this one. We just want to play them both. So it's interesting. I think at the end of the day, it's the consumer who's going to decide, and we're either going to get ourselves into a situation where, like, the game devs are so big that they can just do what they're going to do, and you're going to go to their thing or you're not. But I believe in a future where we're holding multi game events and just inviting everybody to come together, almost like a music festival.
That would be the utopic timeline, I suppose. It's interesting to think about. You mentioned the size of the developers, and you talked about Twitch being sold for $1 billion, and now we see, or at least I guess it was maybe always there for a number of years, but recently the notion of broadcasting rights has been a real big thing. I remember the discussion around the Overwatch League broadcasting rights and how it came real down to the wire with negotiations with Twitch, and Riot has a deal with MLB TV now.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an interesting point in time. It feels like we're at a real crossroads. Do you think that there's a likelihood that maybe we're overextending and things are getting too big for what's here right now? Do you think that maybe we've overstepped the community to a point where maybe gamers want to have these utopic, multi-game conventions, and people are being shied away because that's not there?
Yeah. Are we in a bubble? Is that the question?
Yeah, is it a bubble?
I don't know, man. I've kind of thought so for years, but it continues to grow. I think the bubble conversation is really interesting because I'm not going to pretend like I understand global economics enough to really comment. For a business to be sustainable, there has to be at least as much money in as there is money out. And I know what it costs to run gaming events and to put together big shows. And I know that it's pretty seldom that the money in equals the money out to make something like that, unless you're somebody like Blizzard, right, who makes the game. And, like, there's just so much money to be made if you are the game developer. So if you're profitable in that way, then you as the game developer can afford to do things like launch the Overwatch League and stand up this huge, amazing production and build this fantastic facility. Are we overextended? Can, like, the industry sustain itself? I think that we're not overextended, and I think the industry can sustain itself because, like, even if all that money were to go away today, all of it just poof gone, there would still be a lot of people that want to play games, and there'd still be a lot of people that want to get together and play games with their friends. And to me, that's like the backbone of it all. So I think it's really interesting seeing how much money is kind of changing hands and sort of seeing the deals that are getting made and sort of being behind the scenes and getting a closer look at some of the back end and seeing some of the financials. It's crazy, and it's also a little bit daunting. Like, it's public knowledge that, like, franchises for the Overwatch League went for $20 million each. That's a ton of money. LCS franchises, $10 million each, over 100 applications. That's a ton of money. If we zoom way out and we look at, like, timeline, like today forward being forever, like, I think we can make it up. I think it can come back. I'm not quite sure that I know how yet, but what I'm seeing in the marketplace, like on the ground, is pretty inspiring. Like, there's like this move towards localization. It's got people fired up. I think it can work. I think that there's going to be some correction here and there, and there's going to be some change along the way, but I think it's going to continue to grow.
What do you think about the vast distance that's kind of taking place now between the top of the esports industry and then the more middle to low end? I mean, you've got games like League and Overwatch where you're talking about franchising and localization for multi-million dollars, and then I think about games, like even Starcraft, which it can undoubtedly be referred to as a top 10 esport. It's so different. And then you got games like even Paladins or Gears of War, that's so different. What kind of kind of a system is occurring, or what kind of dichotomy is occurring where these scenes are so vastly different in terms of size?
Well, I think the way we look at it is what's most important, right? Like, um, here's a provocative thought: the size of your audience will never be larger than the size of your player base. What do you think? True or false?
Um, I think that's just objectively true. I was thinking about Starcraft for just a second. No, I think you're objectively right there.
So like if we can accept that as truth, then we can begin to say that if I know that my audience will never be bigger than my base of players, then I know kind of what the expectation should be for like the maximum value of this opportunity. So like let's take the Gears of War example. Gears is not the biggest game in the world, but it has a large and sustainable player base. I don't think anybody would argue that we can run the $100 million Gears of War League. But I think if you look at the size and the sustained player base that exists within Gears, you can build something to that scale, and it can be really good. And you can put people on it who love Gears and who are passionate about it, who have fun with it, and you can create a great product, and you can grow it. Not to be larger than the size of the base, I don't think, but you can grow it to get pretty close to like being like what is the max potential there. On the other hand, like take a game like League of Legends or a game like Overwatch or a game like Fortnite, massive base, tremendous potential. I think that we just have to be pragmatic about like what is the actual opportunity. How big is this esport? How big is Starcraft? How many people play Starcraft every month? That's the maximum number of people that I'm going to reach. So let me build something to that scale. This is also why I think it's so important that we continue as gamers to be honest about like what the multi-game mentality and approach should be, because like the size of gaming is unbelievable. Gaming is $100 billion industry. It's bigger than music and film combined. I think we're like sabotaging ourselves if we're saying I'm only going to focus on the most tiny little niche of gaming that I can. I'm going to pick one game and I'm going to pick the 0.001% of players. I'm going to cater to them. Why? Let's cater to all gamers and let's build shit that we can all enjoy. And within that, you can have those pockets of super intense competition. And then I think you start to talk about a structure that's pretty big and pretty sustainable in a real way.
Do you think that there's sort of an arms race happening right now within esports, though, with the standards of broadcast and even league formats being elevated so much? I mean, we've got a bunch of franchise leagues at this point. Like even Paladins and H1 are franchise leagues now, and it feels like they've done that. To me, speculating, it feels more like they've done that just to kind of quote unquote keep up more than anything else. I
No,
don't think
man,
it's
I don't
necessary.
agree. I don't agree with you at all. I think that what has happened is there has been a model created that is like it's in the black. You know what I'm saying? Like Paladins has a dedicated base of players that are spending money on the game, and like it's a successful game. Like we don't have to put it next to something else and say, is it as big as Overwatch? We just have to look at it for what it is. This is what it costs to make. This is what we've earned. This is what our player base has given us. This is what we have. This is the bucket of money that we have left that we can use to create a league. And now I can franchise this league and we can monetize it, and we can build the model in a way that is sustainable. Um, every different little ecosystem has like that sort of happy place, that's a little happy point of equilibrium, right? Where like build it for the size of what you got, right? If I can throw a StarCraft event in New York and I know I can get 500 people there, then I shouldn't book a venue for 2,000. I should book a venue for 500 and I should sell it out. I should make something awesome. And I should be happy with that. And I think that that's possible. Um, I think we really do ourselves a disservice when we compare everything. Like, why do we need to do that? Like, take it for what it is. Play the game that you want to play the game that you enjoy, be a part of the community that you want to be a part of, and just be responsible and don't overspend and build it sustainably and love it and have fun with it because it's fucking games, man.
For sure, I definitely agree with that last statement. I wonder though, to the like the original point, do you think that there's any kind of an arms race happening where companies and tournament organizers are now overspending because they're trying to trying to appeal to the masses who are used to a certain level of production or a certain way of doing things?
Is there a production arms race happening? Yeah, I think it's been going on for years. So like, dog, that's a really tough one. Like, yes, there is a certain amount of money that's being invested into things to kind of prove it, right? Like Blizzard has definitely stepped up and said, hey, we're going to take this very, very seriously, and we're going to prove it. Look at this arena that we're going to build. Look at this league we're going to launch. Look at all this time and effort and cash that we're going to pour into launching this big thing, and look at all this great content that we're going to create. I don't think Blizzard's doing that for the masses, though. I mean, they certainly are, right? Their fan base is what sustains it, but I think they're also doing it for like the traditional advertising agency, which expects to see a certain amount of impressions and a certain amount of sellable inventory. And Blizzard's saying, look, this is legit. We have this amount of audience, and we have this amount of inventory that you can invest in. Like, if they don't do that, then what are the sponsors paying for? And I think that's where it is an arms race. And I think that could be maybe where you argue it's a little bit bubbly, but maybe not. We just don't know. We're in uncharted waters. This is new ground. And like, I think if you were to really just zoom out and look at the Overwatch League, like they're exceeding everybody's expectations, right? Like they launched with more viewership than anybody thought. They've sustained more viewership than anybody thought. They brought on more sponsors than anybody thought. Like whatever they're doing is working for now. So we'll see, man. We'll totally see. Again, like if the house of cards comes tumbling down, then I think all that ends up really happening is that money kind of goes somewhere else and is going to get put into the ecosystem in some other place, because like people are going to keep playing games, and that's not going to change.
So none of that was actually like scripted questions or anything. I love this discussion though. I love hearing about the back end business side of esports and the industry and where it's all headed, and I really appreciate your insight on all that. That's it's such a fascinating topic,
dude. Like I don't even claim to, like, I don't know. I don't have the answers. I can speculate, and I certainly have my own vision and my own thoughts and my own belief. And I mean, if you've heard other interviews of like with me, like I do think it's a little bit top heavy. I think it's a lot of it top heavy. But again, like it's kind of working. So, you know, who am I to say it's right or wrong?
Well, as someone trying to break into the e-games industry as a personality, I sure do hope it's not a bubble.
It's not going to go away, man. Like,
yeah.
In fact, I would say, like, in your position, like, you're better off than, well, that's facetious. But in your position, like, you're well positioned to be successful. Like, guess what? The good shit rises to the top, right? The cream rises. So if you're a fine interviewer, you're doing a great job, and like you're making good quality content. And guess what? If you keep turning out good quality content, your audience is going to grow, and people are going to notice, and somebody's going to give you a shot. And who knows where you're going to land? It comes down to putting in the work and being consistent and making sure that your product is high quality, and then not overextending yourself to your previous points. And like, we could totally argue that there's been overextensions. It's not even an argument. There's a fact that there have been overextensions in esports. Anytime you run an event that loses money, whether it's $1 or $100,000 or $1 million, like that's, oh shit, like, is that sustainable? But the overall industry just continues to grow. So I think we're going to be okay, and I think you're going to be just fine.
Well, thanks, man. That was nice little mid-interview shot in the arm, a little ego boost for me. Much appreciated. So bringing it back to the script, let's talk a little bit about your transition that you made 4 years ago. Was it 4 years ago? Yeah, 2014. You left the world of casting to become a behind-the-scenes figure in Red Bull. How did that first come to pass? How did you first get that on the go?
So I would say, you know, it was when, like, Roddy and I were producing our own shows at ESL, and then we got to NASL, and like our first job was talent always. But if you look at the amount of content that NASL produced, holy smokes, it was a ton. So we were already learning the behind the camera part of it. And during my time at NASL, I was also like tasked with leading the World of Tanks project. So I worked with those guys to launch the Wargaming League. We ran some events like in Canada and in Las Vegas. So I was getting that experience. And my good friend Rob Simpson was leading the esports program at Red Bull at the time, and he reached out to me and told me that he needed help. And I was like, shit, man, like I love what I do and it's a lot of fun, but I think that there's a real cool opportunity to really develop myself and gain some serious skills if I go jump over to Red Bull and go kind of all in behind the camera. And so I did, and it's been an awesome journey. At the end of the day, it was just Rob saying, hey man, I've got this spot. You want to come over here and help me build esports? And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. And it was a great move. I don't regret it at all.
Nice. I wonder, was it difficult to maintain the relationships that you had built with the other like on-camera personalities in the world of esports? I know that, well, according to social media, I'm pretty sure that our last date was kind of interrupted by you had to go pick up Todd from the airport. You were going to do UFC things, right? And actually, some of my favorite moments from Starcraft streams the past 4 years have been when you've kind of popped up on Roddy's just kind of randomly. I liked his going away one too. You came over and you guys like went to dinner on his last night in America or something like that. And I think that's really cool and that's really special. But I also wonder, was it difficult to maintain these relationships after you transitioned to this back end role?
Yes, it was, because like you see the guys less, right? But Kev lived in California, so we were able to get together, not as often as we should have, but from time to time. Frodan is one of my closest friends, and we used to, before I moved to New York, we would get together and like go climbing and eating Korean food all the time. Starcraft's a pretty special thing. If you work in the industry, like the talent behind Starcraft are just so good. I don't think that any other game has talent at the same level as Starcraft, and I don't know why that is, but every single one of those guys is so funny and so smart and just so great at carrying a broadcast or conducting or taking an interview, and they're all such good dudes, man. I really I take pride in the fact that I could probably fly around the world and crash on a Starcraft person's couch in just about every country if I ever needed to. So yeah, it was tough to maintain the relationships, but we all still, stay in touch, and we have our Discord channels where we'll talk, and we have our, we are always tweeting back and forth at each other. Like I think the Beaver Dam photo is still my greatest creation, and it's the greatest product of my career. So I have to throw that out there every now and then. Yeah, just like anything else, man. Relationships are work, but I've managed to keep in touch with a few of the good guys.
Nice, that's really encouraging. And I'll toss the Beaver Dam photo up on screen. we'll make it happen. You said in your blog post actually it wasn't the one that you announced your departure from casting, but in a 2015 blog post on TL, you said that you never had an issue transitioning into that behind the scenes role. But I wonder though, is there any part of you that still to this day might crave that on-camera role? Do you ever miss casting to any degree? And is there a world where you return to it?
I don't know that there's a world where I return to it. I think it's really fun to be on camera and to be on stage and to present and to kind of be the center of attention. I would love to be a regular guest on a podcast or a talk show of some type, but like, dude, the work that goes into casting is really hard. And the work that goes into doing what I do now is also really hard, but like holding down a desk is hard. I can't give those guys enough props. It's not something I want to go back to. I think that what I'm doing now is awesome because I get to chart a course and I get to build something. And building a broadcast is super fun, but at the end of the day, your job is to present the players and present what's on screen and to make that as good and as fun and as compelling as possible. Now the job is how do I build something permanent? How do I really develop a community? How do I give an entire city a place to play and compete and to meet friends and to socialize and to have an experience? And I think that's really powerful, right? The idea that we can create the next stage for guys like Roddy and Todd to stand on. So, they both have awesome sort of perks, but I think this is where my real passion lies.
Well, it's good to hear that you found your real passion, that you're able to work in that avenue. Talking about, building the stage and creating the product and everything like that, your work with Red Bull made a really big impact in the Smash scene and the FGC, where I think Red Bull became, a staple content tournament for the fans. In an episode of Real Talk with JP, you mentioned how you grew up loving fighting games, and that was where your entry point was for competitive gaming with Soul Calibur 2. Much love. Was working with those FGC events, was that like a return to home kind of a feeling for you after so many years with Starcraft?
Yeah, it was really great. I'm from Atlanta, and Atlanta's got a great sort of fighting game scene. I'm from north of Atlanta, but I would travel down to Atlanta and compete in tournaments and stuff. And it's always been close to my heart. So it was awesome to get back to that. Starcraft is also a huge part of my heart. Like, I think I discovered Starcraft really in college, but shit, man, it's been such a long kind of road. Yeah, fighting games were there first. I mean, my first online game was Team Fortress Classic, right? And then Counter-Strike came out and killed TFC, and it just broke my heart. So I could never really love Counter-Strike the same way that other people do. But you're right to say it was Soul Calibur that really got me hooked on competitive gaming. Like it was around the end of high school for me, and I had stopped playing baseball, so I had no competitive outlet, and it just became Soul Calibur, and so it was all consuming. So when I got the chance to work with FGC at Red Bull, like it was dope, right? Because like we brought together all the TOs really in America, all of them, and got them working together. The same guys that host the biggest fighting game events in Atlanta were hosting events for Red Bull, and also the same guys that host the biggest fighting game events all around the world were hosting events for Red Bull. So it was really dope, and it was really special, and it was all about kind of give back to the community. It was about let's cultivate something local, let's give something to the people, let's give them something to play for. Let's give a platform and let's tell the story. And I think that's the most important part of the opportunity that we have in gaming today. Is just like to build community, because those foundation pieces, like for the most part, they don't exist. There's a few good platforms for online play, but there's very, very little dedicated offline anything happening in the world of gaming. And that's such a big opportunity to me.
You talked there about, building the community. The FGC is so different at its kind of core from like Starcraft and the peak esports industry that was happening when you first made your transition to Red Bull. What were the challenges in making that transition and dealing with this new community? Was there a learning curve that you went through in that regard?
I actually think that I think the FGC is easier than the other games. Because the FGC is born of arcade culture. It's a consumer that already knows what it is to leave your house to go play a game and to go have a competitive experience. So it's like you don't have to work as hard to coax them to come out. Yes, it's true to say that it's smaller, but it's also very communal, and everybody knows everybody and has known everybody for the last 20 years. Like Larry Dixon, who hosts Final Round, has been hosting Final Round for over 20 years. That's insane. And you don't really see that in any other like esport title in the United States. So maybe you could talk about like Adam Apicella and his long legacy with Halo, right? But it's just there's so much community there that if you get them together and you build something worth playing for, they'll come. Also, fighting games don't have to have the same kind of connectivity as all the big online games do. So like logistically, it's a little bit of a lighter lift, and it doesn't cost as much to produce a big event for FGC. I think the beautiful thing about FGC is like it's a really good case study for like what's possible on a larger scale with bigger games. But like that model for a Red Bull Proving Grounds event in Chicago, we would spend honestly like $4,000 on an event, all in $4,000. It's amazing. you can't make an Overwatch event for $4,000. It's not going to happen. You got to have so much more. Um, so the model works for kind of proving like how do you get the people together and how do you build the room and how do you get excited, get people excited. But figuring out the infrastructure and the actual logistics of a larger PC tournament is a heavy lift, man. They cost a ton of money to create.
I wonder. You said you mentioned that you started playing Soul Calibur 2 at the end of high school. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Soul Calibur 2 is like one of my first video games. Are you excited at all for the new Soul Calibur? Do you still play? Actually, do you still play these games that you worked so much
I
with?
I live above a gaming cafe, and I do come down and play, probably almost daily. But it hurts me to admit that I'm not as good at games as I once was because I sort of now rather than sitting down and putting 8 hours a day into grinding Starcraft, I might put an hour today into Counter Strike and an hour tomorrow into Overwatch and an hour the next day into Fortnite. Um, it's really important if you're going to do what I do that you can kind of understand all of it. And I played StarCraft at a pretty high level. I was never a pro, but I practiced with the pros, and I've taken a couple of games from top players. And I think that in gaming, once you play to a certain level, like you don't need to play to that same level in the next game to have a good, strong understanding of it. You just need to play to a point of like immersion in the scene and the community. And then you can be like, okay, I get it. If I were to put in, 5 more hours a day every day, I could make that push to this next level. But I get it. I know what it takes, and I know it's fun, and I know what the community cares about. And so that's kind of become the way that I spend my time gaming, just trying to, get some level of immersion and feel like I understand what a game's all about.
Makes sense. Who did you play in Soul Calibur 2?
I played Cervantes and Taki.
Oh, you're a bad person. I don't
Why does
like
that
you.
make me a bad person?
I
I also played Astaroth, who was awesome.
Oh, Astaroth is dope. Okay, all right, we can find some common ground. Okay, it's all good.
Okay.
um, I'm interested as somebody who worked so much with the FGC. You tweeted recently that it was a retweet of a clip, and you said like Street Fighter 4 still puts on an amazing show, something to that
Yeah.
effect. Street Fighter 5 has been so controversial in the FGC. There's been so many opinions espoused on Street Fighter 5 and how it is bad for this, that, the other reason. But I want to know your thoughts. As a tournament organizer person, what do you think put on the better show, Street Fighter 4 or Street Fighter 5?
Um, I think Street Fighter 4 at the end of its life cycle put on a better show than Street Fighter 5 has yet. But Street Fighter 5's got more time. I do think that at the end of the day, the Street Fighter 5 box is a little shallower than the Street Fighter 4 box, and there's just like a certain like amount of guessing that goes into playing Street Fighter at a pretty high level. But again, like I'm not a Street Fighter 5 pro. Um, Shit, man, I don't really know how to field this one. Like, I think Street Fighter 5 is a great game, and I loved playing Street Fighter 5, and I liked playing Street Fighter 5 more than Street Fighter 4 because it was a little bit more accessible, and it kind of feels dirty to say that coming from my hardcore StarCraft background, and I completely understand the criticism of Street Fighter 5 that's out there. But it's a good game. It's a really good game, and it's one of the best fighting games that's out there, and it's well supported by Capcom, and it's got a huge community. And it's eternal. Like Street Fighter is going to last forever. It is the first fighting game, and it'll probably be the last fighting game. So I don't see it going away. I don't really want to put them side by side against each other. I think Street Fighter 4 was incredible, and I think at its peak, the skill level and the show that you got out of Street Fighter 4 is not something that Street Fighter 5 has yet delivered. But I think Street Fighter 5 has not yet hit its peak. So let's give it some more time, and we'll see.
I think that's incredibly fair. I can definitely get on board with all of that. Similarly, what are your thoughts on the state of StarCraft 2 right now? All the StarCraft 2 community that I've built are chomping at the bit. They're like, why are you talking about these other games? Where's the StarCraft? Where's the StarCraft? Now it's the StarCraft, guys. Okay, just a little bit, all right? But yeah, we've had 3 expansions. We're coming to a point now after Legacy of the Void where there's big, huge overhauls yearly to make the game, new, refreshed. What are your opinions on the state of StarCraft 2?
I think that StarCraft 2 is in a stable and sustainable place. I think that I think it's probably worthwhile to try and stand up some third party StarCraft events out there in the world. I'd certainly love to put one together here in New York at some point. Um, it's the best RTS that there is. There's nothing out there that challenges it. So I think it's great. It's the audience isn't as big as it was once because games come and go and players move on. But it is still the hardest game in the world. It's still the peak of RTS, and it'll continue to be for as long as Blizzard keeps supporting it, or until the next one comes out. Right? I'm sure there's probably a fancy new Warcraft in the future eventually, and then probably Starcraft 3, 10 years after that. So I think it's absolutely fine, and I don't have any bad opinions or emotions on it. I do think it's a bummer that it took us so long for Starcraft to kind of settle. I think there's plenty of things that could have been done different in the early days that might have made it settle in a little bit faster. But at the end of the day, it's a very hard game. It's sort of a punishing game to play. So like the easier, more accessible stuff is going to be more popular. That's just the nature of the beast.
You said I keep going back to this Real Talk episode, but I think it's the best piece of comprehensive, interview work surrounding you. So that's why. Shout out to JP. Bring it back, JP.
JP's the man.
Come do an interview with me, JP. He won't respond to my emails. God damn it.
What about
yeah. You said in this interview with JP that one of the biggest things that StarCraft 2 tournament organizers weren't doing circa 2013 was that they weren't putting a focus on the player stories. And you mentioned it, throughout the piece more than once. Do you think that we're doing better now in this day and age with StarCraft 2 player storylines?
Maybe. How do I want to answer that? So yes, I would say yes is the answer. I think the most recent Nation Wars is probably a testament to that. Would be great success, packed arena. The answer is yes. That said, I think the other answer is there's so much content now. There's probably too much content now that it's hard to follow it all. I think that. Fuck, man, I just think there's too much content out there. If you're a StarCraft fan and you're passionate about StarCraft, then there's stories there for you to consume and gameplay for you to watch. I think the core of it all still comes down to play and giving people a platform and giving people an opportunity and a reason. And I would like to see more of that. I think through that you unlock better stories, right? I think if we could tell the story of a New York kid who played in a few local events here in New York and then went to IEM and finished top 8, I think that's a great story. I'd rather tell that story than the story of Major being the best player in Mexico again.
I hear you. When you say that there's too much content, can you extrapolate on that a little bit? Do you mean that there's too much content in StarCraft 2 or just esports in general?
No, I don't aim that at StarCraft 2. I just aim in the world, man. Like, go on Netflix or Hulu and tell me, like, how much of that shit do you actually want to watch? There's so much content. Like, everyone says content is king, but at some point there's going to be just more out there than we are capable of consuming. I mean, it's already like that. What stories are we supposed to focus on? Which ones matter? What's relevant? I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to the person who's viewing it. But to me, I just feel like there's too much out there. It's hard for me to follow it all.
I hear you.
I hear you 100%. I'm an expert. Like, I'm on top of it, and it's hard for me to follow it all.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. Like, even just reviewing tournaments and looking at tournament VODs. There's some weeks where you can't do it. Especially if you try and follow more than one game. I mean, I've kind of got my fingers in the pot for StarCraft is my main game, and then a little bit Overwatch, and then sometimes I try and take in some FGC, and it's not even possible, even if you put the VOD to 1.5 playing speed.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just put all those games in one room and have one event that you could show up to and you could, like, absorb every storyline, like, one time? Oh, cool. This is the state of it today. Dope. I'll come back in 6 months and we'll see where it is then.
I don't know that I believe in this utopia. I think it's interesting too how you mention the concept of telling the story of the player from New York who battled the way, to the round of 32 of the IEM, rather than telling the story of, like, oh, best player is best player once again. I 100% get on board with that. I've been trying my hand. Uh, I've done a number of tournament recap and player profiles and tournament preview. And I think that part of the challenge there is getting the core audience used to the idea of hearing about players they're not familiar with, especially in StarCraft. It seems to be an issue, and personalities they're not familiar with. Do you have any opinions on that? Like how you can bridge that gap, how you can ease in that transition?
Um, well, yeah, I think I so like the interesting thing about StarCraft is now here we are, however many years later, and it's got all this history and all this legacy, right? That's also important, and I don't want to gloss over that. I think the reason that FGC is so special, and that Smash is so special, and that Counter Strike is so special, and that StarCraft is so special is that these games have history. Now, League of Legends is actually quite special because it's got some great history. This year, and the double lift story, for all the tragedy that's in there, was amazing and inspiring. And it was more so inspiring because, I mean, yes, he overcame a really, really terrible thing, but he's also somebody we've been watching for years. And that makes it just fundamentally changes it. This is a person that you know and that you feel a connection to, you've been watching for a long, long time. So how do we introduce a new storyline alongside? I think the important thing is like you need the juxtaposition, like the fact that there is legacy and there is a kind of a storyline and an expectation that we can be following to then have the new story come on and disrupt it. Is I think that's where it's most compelling to say that, Daigo is the greatest fighting game player of all time, and here he is in the top 8. He's playing against this guy Mina from the Dominican Republic. Who is this dude? We've never even heard of him. And oh wow, he's going to win. He's going to win the Capcom Pro Tour. I think I'm maybe going in circles a little bit, but the idea of legacy next to the new generation, right? Something that Carmack told me a long time ago when I first started working at ESL, that has stuck with me all these years, and I think is so true. Is excuse me, an esport is dying when there are no new players coming into it. So if we can't tell the story of a new player, then that suggests that there are no new players, and that the game is, in the last sort of stages of its lifespan. But for that new player's story to be compelling, I think there has to be legacy to put it next to. Is sort of my final point.
It's very profound. Yeah, that whole kind of idea, I think that deserves a closer look in general for another point in time, perhaps. So, you recently accepted a position with NYXL, New York Excelsior. How did that come to pass? Where did your interest in Overwatch and the Overwatch League kind of kickstart?
I would say that with the utmost level of respect to Overwatch, the reason that I was interested in this job was not Overwatch. It was New York, and the opportunity to build something in New York that can transcend one game and be inclusive of all games. Like this whole kind of motif in our conversation about the multi-game event, like that's really what I'm here to build. And Overwatch is the big shiny asset that we have. And I don't know how Blizzard's going to, let me do what I want to do, but like truly the dream is to create strong, fun events that people want to be at, where you're not pigeonholed into only doing one thing or only playing one game or only staring at a screen in an arena for 6 hours or 8 hours, but you can come and you can be engaged and you can play what you want to play and you can have a good experience and you can bring a friend, or you can meet a friend, and it can be like a holistic, like awesome thing. Yes, this is an Overwatch team. We're the number one Overwatch team in the world. Yes, we're gonna do awesome shit in Overwatch, but we're also gonna do awesome shit for gamers in New York. Period. And that just means listening to the community and talking to all the different players that are here and figuring out what they care about and then finding a way to provide it.
I think it's interesting. You put in your blog post on Team Liquid when you announced this new position. You said, "quote The job is simple: turn New York into an esports city." End quote. And obviously, you just touched on that just now in talking about how you want to do multi-game events and really build something cool. But tell me, what's the baseline that you're starting with? What are the foundations for New York esports that are already there for you to work with?
Well, we've got our fan base, which is really surprisingly awesome. And I shouldn't use the word surprisingly, but like I didn't know what to expect when I got here. And I think coming from my background and given my history, like I was a little cynical about Overwatch in the Overwatch League. And then I got here, and there's just like thousands of NYXL fans already, which is crazy. I mean, that's a testament to the strength of what Blizzard has done. So that's foundation piece number one. We've got a fan base that's engaged, and that's really awesome. A foundation piece number two is like the IP that we have access to, right? We have the Overwatch asset. I can throw an Overwatch event if I want to throw an Overwatch event. The final question is, can I convince my thousands of fans to come out to the Overwatch event? And then if I can, what else can I do there that's awesome and engaging and fun? And maybe in the short term, it's Overwatch with a side of Starcraft and Hearthstone. But I think long term, I really, really want to see us standing up big events that cater to every gamer in the city. Like, why can't it be Overwatch and FIFA and Fortnite and Dota? Like, why not? Is there really a reason why we shouldn't be able to do that? Like, if that's what the community, if that's what gamers want, then I think we should be able to find a way to give it to them.
Cool. So at what point are you going to start trying to tap into all that, I guess? I know you've put off a couple of events so far. You had the meet and greet, right, with the boys, and then you did a voice acting kind of meeting, the Overwatch League. You had the voice actors for Far and Mercy, right, come out for a viewing party. And you got the contenders team. At what point do you think you're going to start putting off tournaments or transition into this grand scheme?
It'll start this year. We'll have our first events this year, hopefully sooner than later. I'd really like to do something over the summer, and then I'd like to try to set another target in like November, December, into the year. We're working on some stuff now that I probably would be premature to speak to too directly, but I would love to see some big tournaments a couple times a year here in New York that really give New Yorkers lots of opportunities to come together and compete and establish, who's best. Who are the top 10 New York Overwatch players? I'd love to be able to answer that question, like objectively.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool concept to build around, just in general. Going back to this kind of motif of real time with JP, like we had before, the question of StarCraft 2 tournament organizers telling the player stories. How do you think Overwatch is doing in that regard? And do you, in particular, have any plans to make it happen?
Yeah. I think Overwatch is doing a great job. Honestly, I think we have the teams creating content. I think you have the league creating content. I do think that there's more content out there than we can all consume. But that's cool. It means every story is kind of getting told. Will we do that? Will we do more? Sure we will. Like, again, like if I'm telling you that my goal is to create New York competition for every gamer, then I want to also be capable of telling the story, right? Like just think for a moment, like how cool would it be if we'll just go crazy and say once a month, every single month, you could go to a tournament in New York for every single game in the world. And after some number of months, we would have a very clear snapshot for who the best players are in the city. And after a little bit more time, we'd have a very clear snapshot of like what every different competitive ecosystem looks like, and what every different competitive community looks like, and how big it all is. And then we would have the ability to start telling really, really compelling stories about, some players like climb up the leaderboard. Who's this new name who's disrupting what has been established here over time? Or maybe the story of the guy who's just sat at number one forever. Like, who is the best Street Fighter player in New York? And what makes them the best? And how long have they been the best? And why are they the best? And what do they do to be the best? And then who's the second best? And what's that like? And to be able to take that model and scale it in every game and in every direction, I think is truly the path to, esports salvation, if you will. Like just give them a chance to play. Let's give them a means to come together and to be one community and to play. And I think you can change the world if you do that. I truly believe you can change the world if you just give people an opportunity to play together.
I wonder what kind of differences you see in the Overwatch community and the fan base for Overwatch Esports. I mean, like we said earlier, you've worked with a bunch of different games, a bunch of different communities. There's constant discussion in Overwatch Esports about the community and the way that it handles content and just what it is. I guess it seems very different from traditional esports communities. What are your opinions? What are your thoughts on this?
What's the difference between Overwatch and everybody else?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you call them different. I would argue that they're not. I would say that they're really all quite similar. The Overwatch community is full of people who love to play and watch Overwatch. Just like the fighting game community is full of people that love to play and watch fighting games. I think it's actually super straightforward.
Fair enough. You don't see a kind of a divide between the more I don't like using the word casual, but the more casual fan base and then the esports hardcores?
I think what I see in Overwatch more than I've seen in any other game is a greater level of separation between the hardcore player and the person that just wants to be a fan. But I think that our common ground continues to be, a love of game, right? If not a love of game, then a love of community that comes with it. And there's if we go back, right, back in the day when I was casting Starcraft, like if you're trying to be like a talent or a caster or an interviewer or whatever, and you were bad at the game, like that was just like you instantly lost all of your credibility. That same kind of scrutiny doesn't exist so much today. And as a result of that, I think some of those walls are kind of falling down and people are feeling like it's all more accessible and it's easier to come together because I don't have to be a top player to have a place in this community. And I can have a place. I can carve out a little spot for myself and I can have impact and influence. I can make a difference, right? We all want to just fucking make a difference. If anything, I think Overwatch has done a great job of making it more inclusive. And that's certainly, I think, by design, if you just look at their characters. But I don't view it as fundamentally different from any other community. I actually think they're all quite similar, outside of the fact that Smash community likes Smash and the Overwatch community likes Overwatch.
Fair play. I think it's interesting to hear that perspective. I think that a lot of the time you get the Debbie Downers more so than anything else in regards to the Overwatch community discussion.
I think the internet's just a little bit of a negative, toxic place, to be frank. It's not even I think it's just, it is. The internet can be a really dark and toxic place. And I think one of the most important issues is like confronting what it is to be a hardcore gamer. And like if I want to be an Overwatch pro, what is my process? It's go home, close the door, click play, get matched up with 11 other people, and half the time I'm going to have a bad experience because I'm going to have somebody toxic on my team or the other team, and it's going to suck. And the same is true of League, and the same is true of Dota, and the same is true of Counter-Strike, and it's everywhere. And to me, this is actually why it's so important that we move these things offline and we have in-person experiences and we build like in-person community. Because the second you put people in the same room together and you put them face to face, a lot of that toxicity just goes away. And the second that you take an online argument offline and you put people face to face, you see resolution a lot more quickly than you do just shouting into a fucking void. You know what I mean? So I don't even know what the question was that started me on my rant, but my message here is bringing people together offline builds communities and builds friendships and builds real connections with people that make that toxicity go away. I think if in every city in the world there were local gaming events and we were all holding each other accountable, then online would get better because we would learn good manners and we would learn what it is to be polite to each other, and we would learn what it is to have a human on the other side of that interaction and not just a screen. And I think that's important.
Definitely. I like the rants, by the way. Don't worry about the rants. We can lose topic anytime you want to go on a rant. All right. I did take some fan questions, and I'm pleasantly. I can't say I'm pleasantly surprised, but from CompOW, where I'm not really known at all or anything, I did get some good ones. So thanks, CompOW, and shoutouts to everyone who got some fan questions in. So diving in onto that. BSC Kid from our CompOW asks, what is the next big event for NYXL? Can you maybe give us a little tease or anything?
So date is still TBD, but I'm hoping to make an announcement very soon. Our next big event will be, it'll be over the summer. It'll be competitive, but it'll also have other stuff. And I would love to hear from more people to know kind of what you want to see at an Overwatch event, because that's what I want to build. I want to build what you want.
What's the best way? What's the best way for people to let you know?
Twitter? Tweet at me. Twitter, MrBitter TV. Hit me with that tweet, and let me know. Let me know what you want to see.
Nice. Nimbus Nacho, also from CompOW, had kind of some broad, sweeping questions about what it'll look like when the Overwatch League transition to this point where the teams are in their home cities.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
Like a brick and mortar location. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely instrumental to the continued success of everything. I love the localization model. I think it's the best thing that the Overwatch League has done. And I think that there is absolutely a strong business case to build an esports arena, if you will, in New York City, and to say to your Overwatch fans, come, this is home. You can come here, you can play, you can watch, you can buy merch, you can have food or drinks. But I also think that this continues to underscore the importance of multi-game, because I don't think you can program an arena with Overwatch 7 nights a week. And if you're going to invest in a facility, you have to be on 7 nights a week. So what do you do the other 6 or 5 or 4? You know, if it's Overwatch 2-3 nights a week, then what about the other days? You can't have a huge facility sitting empty and not being used. So we have to make the push into multi-game. We have to.
Makes sense to me. Not that I would know. I hope that you value that it makes sense to me, though. I wanted to give my input there.
Thanks for the backup.
Cheers. Also from CompOW, Philomelos asks, when will people be able to actively pursue a career at OWL teams? So far, there have been little to no entry-level vacancies at either Blizzard or the OWL teams, especially in strategic and business development practices. How do professionals get in touch with a team like York Excelsior?
So I just posted 2 jobs not too long ago. I'm hiring. There's two open roles on my team. I'm getting closer to finding the people that I need, but I haven't filled them yet. So those are out there. You can go find them. Man, I got so many applications and so many bad ones. Everybody wants to work in esports. It's very competitive. It's happening, and it's going to continue to happen. I think one of my big ambitions is to find ways to work with the colleges here in New York to not just bring them competition, but to also give students opportunities to intern and eventually work within our organization. I think this is happening in every city where there's a pro team, whether it's Overwatch or League of Legends or something else. And I think that there's tremendous opportunity to find a job in the space and to do something meaningful and impactful. And I think there's a tremendous lack for people that have a good high-level understanding of how the work gets done and what's the lingo of esports. So I truly see this as like a boom market. If you're in school right now, like focus on sports management or economics or design or whatever it is that you're passionate about, and funnel those efforts towards gaming or esports in some way. I think there's going to be good opportunities for a long time.
You mentioned getting a whole bunch of applications and a lot of them being really bad. What does the perfect esports resume look like to you? How do people tailor that?
To me, a perfect esports resume is having real experience doing like meaningful work. So like for me in events, like you might not have any esports experience at all, but if you've produced an event that has brought out 1,000 people ever, like that's pretty strong. And then if you have that knowledge and then you are knowledgeable of gaming or you have a passion for it that you can convince me of or convey to me, that's great. I think experience outside of esports, like the things that I'm not hiring you for your esports knowledge. I don't care about your esports knowledge, and I mean that with the utmost respect. But like the fact of the matter is, I don't really need opinions on my team. I need people that are going to grind and that are going to help fulfill the vision that we've kind of laid down here. So like somebody that comes in and is like, oh, I know everything about esports. You need me. Fuck you. No, I don't. What I need is somebody that's going to work their ass off. That's going to hustle really, really hard. That understands what goes into making the things we do happen, and that can demonstrate that and that can communicate that. And then if they have all those things, then they're allowed to have an opinion. You know what I mean? Like when you have a full understanding of it, that's when I want to know what you think about something. But until you know what goes into it, it just doesn't really matter to me what you think, because you don't have the perspective necessary to give me meaningful feedback. And that sounds really shitty, but
pay your dues type of shit, right?
I mean, pay your dues a little bit, but it's also like know what we're talking about. Like if you're gonna tell me this is what we need to do at the next big esports event, and you're gonna like really like, Ben, this is what we have to do this. Then you need to know what it costs, and you need to know what it takes to execute, and you need to know how many staff are required, and what's the format, and how much time is it gonna take, and how does it fit into the schedule, and how does it fit into the floor plan. And if you can articulate all of that, then you're awesome and you're valuable, and I want you on my team. But until you can, like the fact of the matter is, this is a very, very competitive ecosystem, and there's a lot of talented people out there. There's a lot of people graduating from college, like right now, who like started esports clubs 4 or 5, 6 years ago and ran huge events like in college. Like look at Tespa and the Rosens and what they've done. Like that is a perfect esports resume. Somebody who like built something and that can point to it and say, look at what we did. Tespa's incredible. So I guess the real answer to your question is like a perfect esports resume is experience. And if you're saying that you can't get experience, that's bullshit. You can. It's very easy. Any organization will take you as a volunteer. Any organization will take you to admin an online tournament. That's where you start. And everything you do after that is just a product of your work. So go and get on the grind and build the resume, and then let's talk.
Killer. Good luck to all applicants, NYXL. From our Starcraft, we had a couple cool questions. I don't know how to pronounce this name. There's a lot of numbers in it, but it starts with a W, and then there's a 4. Are there any suggestions that you have for Blizzard in regards to StarCraft 2? Are there any features that you wish would have been implemented even from back in the day?
I think they're kind of starting to do all of it, right? Like having skins and you giving your consumer like little tchotchkes that they can buy. Like that's important and cool. I think we have finally got like good regional competition. I think StarCraft is just special. I think that we just let's do 2 things. Let's take ourselves a little bit less serious and let's have more fun. And then let's get the guys, like when I say the guys, I mean like let's get that old guard of great StarCraft talent together more often, because they have so much fun and they are such great representatives of the game and the scene and the history. I think the one real criticism I have of Blizzard, and it's a light criticism, but it's a real one, is like we're taking ourselves a little bit too seriously, guys. Like this is games, this is fun. We need to loosen up. We need to have fun, and when your talent is having fun, your viewers are having fun, and I think that's what makes for the most compelling show.
Patzer asks, he says, I know it's a loaded question, but if you could ask him what his favorite StarCraft moment was, that'd be great. And we all know it's probably going to be a particular game featuring Scarlet and Bomber, if I had to guess.
That was a good one. That was a very special one. It's probably like the best game of StarCraft that I've ever been able to like be a part of. But my favorite moment was easily the NASL finals in Toronto, where Zoe shaved a Zerg logo into my hair, and we revealed it to, or not a Zerg logo, a Canadian maple leaf under the guise of it being a Zerg logo. Actually, it was fuck. I mean, I totally ruined this story. But we were at the WCS finals or NASL finals. It was in Toronto, and we had this sponsorship with Philips Norelco. And we had to figure out a segment to do for Philips Norelco. And so, like, all right, this is what we're going to do. Roddy and Ben are going to make a bet on stage. And Roddy was not going to shave his hair ever. So I had to be the one that was going to lose the bet. And so, like, we know Starcraft, right? So whenever there was a point in the game where we were sure that it was going to go one way, Kev and I were going to bet on it, and I was going to take the losing bet. And then the loser has to shave their head into the logo of the winner's race. Roddy played Protoss and I played Zerg. So if I had won the bet, he would have to shave a Zerg logo into his head. If he wins the bet, I'm getting a Protoss logo shaved into mine. And Zoe, who's killing it on the Overwatch League, by the way, was there as part of the talent lineup, and she's a super talented artist. She can make anything out of anything. And so we're like, all right, Zoe, you're shaving Ben's head into this logo. But we were in Canada, and we'd been kind of hamming it up to the Canadians the whole time. And they're always just such a great audience. And so instead of shaving the logo, she shaved a Canadian maple leaf into my hair. And then, of course, we had the reveal where we walk out on stage, and I turn around and I took off the hat, and the crowd just erupted. And that was a super special, really fun moment, I think, for a lot of reasons. Like that group of people that worked on NASL was just a special, talented bunch who have all gone on to kind of do great things. And it was just a great moment in front of a great audience, and it was fun. It was a really good, like, sponsor integration. Like, it was good. It was good work all around by everybody, and it was a fun thing that I'll never forget.
I can speak as a dyed-in-the-wool Canadian fanboy that I am. That moment was really special as a viewer too.
That's cool. I'm glad that you.
Maybe Canadians aren't normally super patriotic or what have you, I guess, not like America, but I like my country, and that was just a real cool moment for me as a viewer.
There's so many good ones, man. Like NASL Season 4 finals were special. Huck walking out with the Canadian flag for that Toronto event was super special. Interviewing Idra after Huck did the hallucinations was a really special moment of mine. That video's on my YouTube channel and from forever ago. Like there's been tons. I remember signing autographs with Day 9, and he had a line that was thousands of people long, and there was nobody in my line, and that was fucking hilarious. Just because, like, there's just been so many really charming and special interactions in my life as a result of Starcraft. Starcraft's so special. It's had such a huge impact on me and my career.
I do wonder, because it always seemed to me like yourself and NASL, you had such an affinity for Canada after that event. Is there any possibility, I mean, obviously New York is your focus, but is there any possibility, because there is no Canadian Overwatch League team, maybe there's, a trip up north of the border, come back to Toronto for something?
Never say never, but our focus right now is here in New York. I know that Huck's got some things that he's got happening up in Toronto, and I've got plenty of friends around the biz, and I would imagine that there will probably be an esports team in Toronto or Vancouver at some point.
God willing. Jesus, please, Blizzard, come on, give it to us. Dazde from our Starcraft asks, will we ever see you and Roddy team up and cast again, even if it's just for funsies? And when I saw that question, my mind kind of conjured up Home Story Cup kind of vibe. Maybe make it out there for something, huh?
I would love to go visit Home Story Cup, and if I did do that, then I would certainly hop on the couch for some funsies. But I promise you, nobody wants to hear my commentary. I played my first ladder match in ages, like a week ago, and I did win, but it was against somebody that opened one base Forge cannon. So I think it'd have been a bad luck if I didn't win that game, if that makes sense.
Rough. You should reconsider, though. I got that question more than once from more than one person.
No, look, dude, I'd love to do a cast with Kev. Of course I would. Just give right time, right place. Let's make it happen.
Wonderful. All right, that's Go home, folks. That's what you were all waiting to hear. From Team Liquid, Fear Dragon, WCS Premier level caster Fear Dragon asks, you've had a lot of involvement with different types of esports scenes. What are some lessons you feel like different scenes could learn from each other?
That's a good question. I think that, I think it all comes back to inclusivity and community. I think that we need to stop keeping people out, and we need to start like embracing people that want to come in. I like. I don't know. I don't know that it's a lesson that a community necessarily teaches another community, though. I just think all of us just need to do a better job of welcoming others into the fold, and like when all of this started, it was just about I want to play games. I want to go to events and play games. I want to have a competitive experience. I want to spend time with my friends, and it was all about just like community. It was all so communal. And in the last couple of years, it's gotten so big and it's turned into spectacle. And that's cool. And it's great that we have spectacle. But I think we just need to remember community. And I beat this horse all the time. But like at the end of the day, it's about coming together and having an experience with others. And I think every community should remember that. And I think every community should seek to do that as much as possible.
In exploring your old YouTube channel, I found one of the most touching videos that I think I've ever seen in esports. You posted a video talking about your mom and the impact that her support has had on your life. How does she feel about your new, well, not your new, but your current career trajectory and this new move to New York?
Yeah, mom's so special. I called her before I took the job at ESL, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, I'm thinking I'm going to go do something crazy." And she encouraged me, and had she not, I probably wouldn't have done it. And she's very proud, and I'm super proud and very lucky to have a mom like her who's been supportive from the time when it was a bad idea to the time when it seems like it's been a pretty good one. So moms are great.
Beautiful. A beautiful thing. I think it's interesting that in every kind of step that you're taking here, in your big moves in the esports industry, you're posting about it on Team Liquid in a blog form. I think that's special, and I think that speaks to the roots that you have in Starcraft 2 and on Team Liquid. But I want to hear from you. I mean, why? What is it that makes you do that? What's compelling you to post these blogs?
I don't know, man. I just think it's respect for the legacy. Team Liquid has been a huge part of my life. I think the guys at TL are probably a part of the reason that I got the first opportunities that I got. I think that they created something very special at a time when it was only about community. And I think that it feels right to post there. And like, where else am I going to do it? Like, that's where the history is, so pay homage to it.
That's a beautiful statement and a beautiful response to the question, but I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't make a Twitlonger joke at this point in time and tell you that's where you're supposed to post your big esports blog things. Fucking Twitlonger.
Man, TL, ride or die.
Absolutely. So you said earlier, we talked about building the perfect esports resume, but I want to go a little bit beyond that in our closing moments. In this day and age, as somebody who has the unique perspective of someone who actually has a hand in the hiring, what kind of advice would you give to anyone trying to make their way up in the esports scene as talent or caster or what have you?
Work hard, work so hard. You have to work, you have to grind. This is such a competitive field right now. Everybody wants to be in it. And it's not just everybody from gaming that wants to be in it. It's everybody from sports and everybody from advertising and everybody that's paying attention to what's going on. And there are sharks in the water, guys. So if you want to make it, you got to work your ass off. And it's harder now than it's ever been, but it's not impossible. And remember that good hard work is done over time. It doesn't happen in a week or in a year. Just get in there and put in the work and make it as good as you can make it and do it every single day. And if you do, I think doors will open. Also, reach out to people and try to connect with people and network yourself as well as you can, because at the end of the day, who you know is almost as important as the work you do.
I wonder if you have any advice on networking. That's something that I fucking despise, honestly, because I hate the feeling. I worry so much about reaching out to people and then being kind of like, oh, that guy's just a leech. He's only reaching out for the sake of reaching out for networking or what have you. Kind of advice do you give in that regard
Go
for
to events.
networking?
Go to events. Go join your community. Be a part of your community. Make it real. Don't be a fake. Don't be fucking real. And then it's not networking. It's just like being a part of it. Immerse yourself in it and live it, and then you're good. Because everything that you represent is now true, and you're not just trying to network to get yourself ahead. You're trying to network to build your community and to give back and to make it more than what it was before you started.
Well, that's about it. That's what I had written down, and more too. This was a real thrill to talk to you, man. Like I said before we started rolling, I think this is one that was on my esports bucket list, and I didn't really think that maybe it would ever really happen realistically. But I'm so glad that we did get a chance to do it. You're one of the people who brought me into esports, who hooked my interest initially. Um, if you have any final words or shout outs you'd like to make or anything, now's your time.
No, man, thank you. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for putting in so much work to make a great interview. And good luck.